So here we are, together in a future we never could have imagined. But in the midst of all this change, what are we learning? Maybe it's that distance actually has the potential to bring us closer. Maybe we're learning that work and ideas can flow from anywhere, from anyone. And productivity isn't always measured in hours sitting at just one desk. That in this time of change, there's an opportunity to embrace the greater good too. Because the boundaries of space and walls, they're no match for human ingenuity. Maybe we're learning something that we knew all along, that change is never easy. But when we come together as a team, a company, a community, that's when great things happen. From people staying connected, safe, and secure, to teams working together, to making the seemingly impossible possible. There are millions of stories a day just like this, and they are why we exist. We're LogMeIn, the work from anywhere company. And right now, all over the world, we're helping businesses, big and small, municipalities, nonprofits, healthcare organizations, and schools stay productive, resilient, safe, and connected.
We welcome you all to Corridors of Technology. This particular series of sessions is about security, productivity, and scale. That means how can you build your security, productivity, and scale within your business. In today's session, we have experts from the company called LogMeIn, and I'll walk you through the context and details of this particular program that we have for today. So Ranjeet Mani is a solution consultant at LogMeIn. He comes from a technology background with 5 years of experience in SaaS-based solution. In his present role, Ranjeet is focused on providing the best solution for customers on communication, customer engagement, and identity as a service in the Indian market. I am Sunny Sharma. I am the chief curator at Foetron. For the last 11 years, I've been instrumental in the areas of cloud computing, digital transformation, and change management. I've played key roles in driving digital literacy, digital tool adoption, and consulting services to medium and large scale businesses. The content that you see on this particular session will also be available at Foetron Academy, which is a YouTube channel. So you can all go and subscribe and access the content which is available there. So Foetron is your trusted IT partner. We have digitally impacted more than 45,000 professionals. We serve more than 952 plus organizations, and we have 180 plus digital self-learning modules for you to be better and get trained on the latest technologies. This is Foetron Academy. There's a set of videos that are available, expert sessions that are available for you to access and learn and drive transformation within your organization. So what I want to convey with today's session is that cybersecurity is the most important thing. Every day we hear that there's a data theft or a potential hacking event, or that you are getting spam and phishing emails, and a lot of stuff is happening. You need to understand that in the digital world, all of us are user credentials. We use our username and password to log into our systems, which can be applications or corporate provided systems. So what do we do as a cybersecurity best practice to ensure that the authentication and access is controlled in a way which gives us the control and security that we need in the organization? So I would request Ranjeet to kickstart the session from here and take our audience forward with this.
All right. So, hey guys, I'm Ranjeet. I'll be walking you through how we can actually empower the IAM portfolio in a digital economy as what it is today. And as Sunny mentioned, everyone's using passwords. Passwords are a common norm. As much as every company would love to go passwordless, the key factor here is password is a given in any scenario, right? So what we recommend out here is how can we leverage this, and what is the new norm? What are the things that we have to take into consideration, and are there any tools that can actually help us out in this day in, day out scenario? Now, before I start off with the session, I want to quickly launch a poll. I want to understand what you guys think. So let me just quickly launch a poll. And the question is pretty simple. Which among the following do you think is a good option for password hygiene? Right? Is it the two-factor authentication, or is it the new thing, which is the passphrases, where you need to use, we recommend using long password rather than individual passwords, small passwords, or is it the option of, not reusing passwords because, or do you think that's the only thing, or is it all of the above or none of the above, right? Let's keep it open. I'm going to keep it open for the next 30 seconds. We'll keep it open for approximately a minute, and then we'll see what the respondents actually have to say. Now, during this entire thing, we'll be talking about things that we already know, just that we don't really look at it. What are the current things that's going to be changing thanks to COVID? What are things that is happening as of now? Again, thanks to COVID, and how we can actually help ourselves on a day in, day out scenario, right? So let me quickly close the poll and let's see what the results have been. 60% of you said all of the above. That's, I think we're on the same page. And some of you said use two-factor authentication. Yes, definitely two-factor authentication does help, but it would have helped if it was in the old school way. But right now, things have changed. Things have changed a lot. And for the 40% of you who are here on the call, you'd realize why exactly this makes a bigger impact on our day-to-day life. So today's key takeaways, what we're going to be covering, right? So we're going to be covering about the trends and the threats that define the workforce. What are the current things that are happening? What is the near future? How does it look like? What are the things that we should be looking out for? How can we move from where we are? Some of the tips to protect yourself from your organization, which now is completely revamped, and the tool, which will actually give you all the required information. Right. So let's start from the basics, right? What exactly is happening in the current scenario? The remote work has become the new norm, right? Remote work has been, it was kind of more of a trend, but earlier, but now thanks to COVID, it's become the exact way every organization is working. But still, some companies are still having people come in, but at the end of the day, remote work has its advantages. Give you an example, LogMeIn, we were a 30+ physical office company, which moved from 30+ to about 4,000 offices. LogMeIn has decided not to have any physical offices anymore, and everyone will be working from home. The reasons are, are quite, valid out here, because most of them feel they're more productive when they're working from home. And let's be frank, we are from India. You know the amount of traffic when you actually go. So let's reduce on the carbon footprint as well. And also you don't have to spend a lot of time going back and forth. We have the tools, we have the technology that actually enable us to work from anywhere and have a very high profitability when it comes to working from anywhere. So the current scenario, remote work is a given. Now, that being said, it poses a lot of significant, a lot of risks for people who are coming in. Now, if you take a look at what was happening in 2018 and 2019, there were security risks because we brought in the concept of bring your own device, which meant, I'd have to, control them, I had to work with them. But that was good because they were sitting within an organization, so I could have like a firewall, I could have proxy servers and make sure that everything goes through it. But now people are working from anywhere and everywhere. Now, yes, you could say, you know what, you can only access through VPN, but the guy is not going to be sitting on VPN 24/7, and he's going to be using his laptop or his workstation that is at home to access any personal stuff as well. So you can't be completely controlled out there. So that's one of the things, because one of the biggest thing that we've noticed, or according to the recent study conducted by Google, was that phishing has surged 350% since COVID-19. Now, this is a comparison between January of this year versus the May of this year. And 18% increase in scams have been, especially to capture personal information. Now, you look at this, why exactly does personal information mean so much, and what exactly do we mean? How can we help this? But 18% of the attempts in hackers are just to gather personal information, such as, getting details of email credentials, the phone credentials, and stuff. And this has been increased over the last couple of years, and especially in the second quarter of 2020, there's a drastic increase by about 18%. And 81% of breaches are related to compromised or stolen credentials. Glad no one actually said that you're not supposed to be using the passwords. Here, we are talking about most of them reusing passwords. We'll get into that a little while. We'll talk about what exactly does this mean and how do we help these things out and all that stuff. But these are some of the biggest risks on a day-in, day-out basis. When you're working from home, you don't get the insight. And if you take a step back, right? If you take a step back and if you ask any IT guy, what is a good password hygiene? How do you ensure your passwords are safe within your organization? Everyone talks about, having a good proxy server, having a good VPN system, having multiple firewalls to ensure people are not coming in. But they forget the key component. They forget the people. They forget that we as human beings are the weakest link in the entire security chain. I have personally seen people write down their passwords on a piece of sticky note and stick it on the table. I mean, that was when there were offices. Now you can imagine what's the worst that can happen when they're sitting at home. Right? I have personally visited my friends who've got his passwords on a diary and has kept it out there. I mean, if I wasn't going with the wrong intent, I would have just taken the diary and I would have gotten access to the entire network. Right? So that's kind of the thing. But if you take a step back and ask these people, right? If you ask them what is a good password hygiene, everyone knows what a good password hygiene is. 91% of all the users, they know they should have different passwords for different websites. Reusing password is a bad thing. They are aware of it. But what's currently happening on the field is that 66% still continue using the same passwords. They use the same passwords. They use passwords of their pets, their wives, the kids, and they use variations of it. And I'm not saying, let's not point out others. Let's just look at ourselves from our perspective. We as users, we still have the habit of reusing passwords. It's a given because it's impossible for us to remember different passwords because on an average, every user uses at least 30 to 40 different applications. Now imagine, as per the good password hygiene, I need to have 30 to 40 different passwords, and me remembering 32 different complicated passwords, it's not practically possible, right? So what we do is we use variations of the same password. We use uppercase, lowercase, maybe a little bit of numbers here and there. But for someone who's hacking or getting access to your environment, they use something called as a rainbow attack. Now, rainbow attack is basically I get a password, I use every combination of that to get into your account. And that's pretty simple. There are known knowledge bases or databases out there in the market that they can run these things, and it's easier for people to hack. So that's one of the things. 90% of them, they know they shouldn't do it, but 60% of them actually still do it. The other option is like 80% of them know that they should not repeat passwords because I was one of those users where I used to have same password, be it for my social media websites. I used to have a different password for all my banking stuff, any financial stuff, and I used to have a different password for my office stuff. But at the end of the day, I'm still repeating it. That's exactly what's happening. Almost 50% of all the people are still using the same password. This has been increased since 2018, and 77% of them, think that they are well educated. They are informed by the people, by their companies on what is a good password hygiene. They know how to keep, how to complicate passwords. They know how to use it. But the fact of the matter is, they are still repeating them because they don't have a tool that enables them with what they need. So that's where, that's where the biggest lack is. They have the knowledge. They know they're not supposed to do that. They know they're not supposed to repeat it. They know they're not supposed to have simple passwords. And they're aware of the training that a company provides, but they lack the required technology that can help them with their requirement. So that's what we're going to be covering. We're going to be covering for the next few minutes. We're going to be talking about what are the things that you as an organization would need within your arsenal of things. And second, how do you ensure your users are going to be enabled with this? Okay. So from an organization perspective, let's take a step back again and we'll look at how you are doing things. So everyone who's got an AD password within the organization, you know how your users' password hygiene is. You set up certain policies. You set up that these guys should have uppercase, they should have lower characters, they should have numbers, they have special characters and all these stuff, and they should have at least 12 character long passwords. That is when they log into the company machine. But do you have insight into what they do on the outside of the work environment? So that's one of the things. You need to have a tool which gives you the ability to see everything from what they use within the organization and outside the organization. Right? Now, there are so many case studies. There are so many use cases where an employee has used the same password that he uses within the organization on a third-party website. And when the third-party website is hacked, it's easier for the hackers to get into the system because everyone does. Everyone uses the same password. You got in the system, and you've got literally a hacked environment, right? And as the numbers dictate, it only takes one exposed employee passwords to unlock the entire access to your environment. And an organization who falls into the small to medium industry, if they have such a breach, they might as well shut shop because they cannot afford to have the data loss. And now data is the most worthy equipment or worthy tool that you can actually have within your environment. And customers would literally rip you apart if their data has actually been compromised within your environment, right? So that's what you need. You need to have a tool that can actually give you all the information, that can give you every detail of how the user's password is, and at the same time should be able to provide you with any alerts if something were to go wrong. And it's not just you don't just focus on the high value or critical roles within the organization like your engineers or your C-level executives. It can be anyone and everyone. And the other component, if you take in this current day and age, is sharing of passwords. Every employee within your organization shares password. Be it an IT member, be it a marketing team, be it a sales team, they are sharing passwords. It's a given. The best way to go is go passwordless. Set up single sign-on, set up SAML, you're set to go. It's perfect, works great, works wonders, but that is not the fact. There are still sites which cannot go passwordless. There are still applications which cannot go passwordless. So I need to enter the username and password, and everyone shares usernames and passwords. And you might think, well, my IT team does not share passwords. Let's think about it. As an IT member within your team, you do have access to certain servers or certain RDP connections, and the fact is you are still sharing passwords. Take it to the marketing team. The marketing team is also sharing passwords to let's say, your company LinkedIn profile or the Facebook profile. Now, when they are sharing passwords, you as an IT administrator, you want to know who's sharing passwords, who they are sharing passwords with, and why do they need to have read access or see the passwords. Like, for example, as a marketing manager, if I want to share passwords with my teammates, I can give them access to Facebook. I don't need them to know what the password is, because one of the biggest problems is when someone leaves the organization, my first job as a manager is to reset all the passwords, which is a pain for me. So that's where you need to have the ability to see, control who has what kind of rights, and also enable certain controls to ensure that the password sharing does not go outside the organization. I can give one quick use case of an organization which we just recently closed. These guys, they're pretty big in the ticketing industry. The ITSM tickets. So these guys were actually sharing passwords or sharing codes through their chat platform. Now, that chat platform was compromised, and their proprietary codes, the codes that they worked, that the entire bread of that entire organization was compromised. Now, that is a very big risk. Imagine your proprietary code being lost out on the internet and everyone being able to access it. That opens up to so many threats for you as an organization. So that sharing cannot only be passwords, can be anything and everything. So you as an organization should be able to access, authenticate the right user, and monitor and manage the environment. The other thing is multi-factor authentication. Like 40% of you said, two-factor authentication, yes, well, good, great. But you need to you need to up that one security factor. Two-factor authentication, yes, you log in, get a push notification, you work it. But sometimes the push notification is not enough. Sometimes the push notification just comes in out of nowhere. You just enter the PIN. That's as bad as you just giving the password to someone. Because let's be frank, every time you get a push notification, unless and until you called for it, you'd have seen it. But sometimes you might see there's a lag in the internet, and suddenly you get a push notification and you're not really sure who called for it or when it came up. And that's where you need to have a tool which has the brains to control it. Because if you look at most of the scenario, two-factor is really good. You need to have a two-factor authentication, but not it's not one of those things that where one size fits all kind of environment. You need to have to look at the pattern of the user. You need to look at which device he's coming from. You need to look at what kind of controls he's got. So that's where a multi-factor authentication makes sense. You want to see the behavioral option of the user. You want to see the pattern. Like, for example, you'd notice when you try to log into certain applications from the same machine, it's not going to prompt you. That's what MFA should do, but in a more secure manner. And the third thing, something that most of our companies are still doing it, you need to have an organization culture which is more focused towards security. You need to train users to do certain things. You need to do certain activities. You need to make it more rewarding for people to actually, take part in cultural focus. And when you do these things, you also need to enable them with certain applications or tools that can change their way of working. You can give the best of the training, you can give the best of the knowledge for your users, but if you're not actually giving them an overview of, or a tool that can actually help them with their scenario, it's pretty much pointless out there. So you can, after giving the best education, not giving them with the right equipment, you're pretty much losing their ability to, keep the passwords in a safe and secure manner. That's where I want to talk about LastPass. Now, LastPass is one of those tools that actually can help you with anything and everything. So everything that we've been talking about, LastPass does that. Now, LastPass works as a password manager. So for your end users, they don't have to remember 30 to 40 different passwords that they actually log into on a day in, day out basis. If you have a site that can go passwordless, like having a single sign-on option, LastPass can definitely work on that. If you want to have a multi-factor authentication, LastPass provides a biometric multi-factor authentication and not just two-factor authentication. And also, it's one solution that fits all your needs. It provides you with the password management, where you can control who gets access to, what they get access to, how they share the controls. The second thing, you also have the option of setting up passwordless application, like a single sign-on, logging into a machine without a password, and then you have privileged access management. Like if I want to give access to someone only for a particular period of time, or giving them access only from a particular location. Right? So what exactly is LastPass? Well, it's like I said, it's a vault. It's basically a safe where you can store anything and everything. It can be basically a note. It can be a password. It can be a file. Anything that you want to store safely, you put on LastPass. And the best part of LastPass is that it can be accessed on any device. It's pretty much a device agnostic. So you'll have the same experience, be it from an Android device all the way through a server. And the best part is when I'm providing access to users, or when the users log into certain machines, you can actually control it through geo-locking. Basically, you can lock it based on a particular location. So if the user is not within that particular location, it will not allow him to. And that makes it more helpful in a scenario like this right now, because LogMeIn, again, for example, I know people are working from Bangalore office. I know people are working from, the Chennai office, or say people from Chennai, and I have some people in Delhi. I can geo-lock it only to these cities. Now, if I were to go to Mysore or any other state within, any other city apart from these three cities, I will not be able to use my passwords out there. So you have control over it. Or I can lock it based on IP address. If I want everyone to lock in through IP range, I can lock it on that. Or the best thing is time locking. Right? I know my guys are working from 9 to 9. I'm going to give them access only from 9 to 9. Anyone after 9 o'clock in the night should not get access to the thing. That's where LastPass can work. And the best part of this is that you get every information that is being made with the multi-factor authentication. It's not just a push notification. It's not just a 6-digit PIN that you have to enter. As an agent, you get information about who called for it, which location they called for it, and it actually has the behavioral pattern. If you're calling for it from a different location, if you're calling for it from a different IP, or if you're calling from a different machine, it will alert you. And all of this without you having to invest a lot of time and effort on your environment. It's a completely cloud-based solution. So literally plug and play. Now, before you start talking about, oh, wait, this is cloud and we're talking about passwords on the cloud. Wait, how secure are you guys? Well, that's exactly what I want to talk about. We don't just go ahead and hash the thing. LastPass actually uses something called as salted hashing. So, you know, the normal hashing, right? You take a password, you put it in an algorithm, you get a junk value and you save it out there. But LastPass takes it a little above. So every password has a unique salt tied to it. So your password, even if your password is the same as the neighbor's password, your hashed value is completely different from that of the other person. And the best part is LastPass follows a completely zero knowledge architecture. What do we mean by zero knowledge architecture? Well, what we actually save is this, which is the chunk, and not this. So LastPass has no idea what the password is. All it does have is this. So LastPass works in a way that the passwords are encrypted on your machine before they are pushed across to the cloud. And they are also decrypted when they come back down onto your machine again. So during the transition, during the saving in the cloud, we don't have your password stored in plain text at all, which means if they were to hack our environment and if they were to literally get access to our servers, they would have absolutely nothing but just this junk value, which would mean nothing to them. So they need your machine and the servers at the same place and the same IP address for it to be dehashed. So that's how we've been in the market for almost 13 odd years, and not once have we had any security loss or data loss. There have been a lot of attempts where people have tried to do something, but not one user's data has been lost till date. Now, what I want to quickly show you is the 3 points that I was covering about earlier. The first one, ability to see and control what the users are doing. And from the second point, ability to control the user's environment itself and also the multi-factor authentication. And that's exactly what I want to talk about. I want to give a quick glimpse about LastPass, how it does, what it does. So we'll start from the end user perspective. How easy it is for an end user to save something on LastPass, how easy is it for him to access certain applications, and also how easy is it for him to share credentials. And when you're sharing credentials, the key point again is, do we give them admin rights, or do we give them read-only rights, or do we hide certain passwords to ensure data security and compliance within my organization's norm? Second thing is the ability to see everyone's password. We're going to be talking about how management actually gets the oversight that they need to control what they're doing, and then we'll quickly look at the multi-factor authentication that I've been ranting about. Right. So first things first, right? What do we do with saving passwords? So LastPass works as basically it works as a Chrome or any web browser extension. Users can save anything and everything. So we're not changing the end user's behavior. We can have the user save anything and everything. And when they're saving anything and everything, they have an option to create different folders within the organization. So it can be my personal folder where I can have the password that I use for my personal stuff, like my Facebook, my Amazon account, or it can be a shared folder where users can actually share these passwords to different users within different accounts. Now, when I'm sharing, here's an example of a user sharing the password. Now, when I want to share the user password, you'll notice there are 3 components. You'll notice that the passwords when I'm sharing has read-only rights, administrator, and hidden. Now, when I'm inviting people, I can invite individual user or I can invite an entire team. So when I invite people, if I give them read-only rights, that means they can see the password. They won't be able to edit the password. Now, this is really good for an IT team because I want everyone to be able to see the password and log in, and I don't want them to change it except for the team leader, who's me. And when I change it, the same thing has to be replicated for all, right? So that way, I don't have to keep updating every user that's saying that I've changed the particular password. The second thing is making them the administrator, which means they have the rights to make and change the passwords. The third one is the most interesting thing, which is, you see, hide password. Now, going back to the example of marketing team, when I want to share a particular password with someone within the organization, I want them to be able to use the password, but not see the password. If I want them to log into a particular application or I want them to log into a particular website for them to work on the website, why do I need to give them the password? I just need them to log in. And that's where LastPass makes an impact. It gives them the access to use the password. So when they go to the particular web page or when they go to the particular application, it auto enters the username and password, but they will not be able to see it because it's hidden. Now, this is from an end user perspective. And what we mean by one of the points that we want to highlight out here from an end user is that you don't have to make any hardware changes. You don't have to make any changes from an end user the way he's working. Because if you introduce any new application within the organization, the first thing that you get is a pushback from him saying, how do I use this? What are the things? It's going to get complicated. So what we do is we replace the Chrome or the Firefox, or the Edge, or the Safari's password manager, which saves the username and password, with LastPass. So he works the same way that he's going to be working. Just that LastPass is going to replace everything. From his perspective, not much of a change. But it gets very interesting from a management perspective. What I have here as an administrator is the ability to see everything within my organization. I get to see how my users are using the password. I get to see how they're reset. I mean, how many of them are reusing passwords. Now here, the key point is the zero knowledge model. What we do give you is a password hygiene, but not the password itself. We give you an insight into the environment of each and every user, like if they are repeating passwords, if they have different passwords that are shared within the users, if they have different groups who have got access to a certain password. All of that information is provided, but you'll never get to know what the password is. And from an administrative perspective, you also have the option of setting up certain policies, certain controls that you want to choose. Like, for example, as I mentioned, they can share passwords, but they should not be able to share passwords outside the organization. Or they should not have passwords. I mean, anytime they save any password, the password should be at least 18 characters long. I'm not talking about 80 passwords. I'm talking about passwords that are there used within your organization or outside your organization. If they log into a particular company website, I want them to have 15 character long passwords, or I want them to be controlled on which location they're coming from, or I want them to have more controls of how these passwords are going to be shared. So all these things are what you actually have a control on. And here's one quick policy where we're saying the user should not be allowed to reuse the master password, similar to what you use within your AD. Like when they log into the AD, they shouldn't have like a 5 history. So like I can't use my earlier password for the next generation. And I have the granularity on how and where do I choose it from. I can choose individual users. I can choose the entire organization. I can choose an exclusive list of members and have this applied. Now, there are certain policies that make a very big impact within the organization. For example, if I'm sharing passwords, I don't want them to be sharing outside the org. The second thing is you have an option called as super administrator. So as a super administrator, any user who shares any password within the organization, you have controls over it. What I mean by that is if I get to see that someone's sharing it outside the organization, yes, you can send an email notification, you can control. You have one best thing, which is called a kill switch. And what LastPass also does, it actually has partnership with the dark web monitoring. It's one of the videos that you saw earlier, where if a user has a password that's been compromised on the dark web, it will notify both the end user and the organizer or the administrator. So as soon as the administrator gets a notification, he has a one-click button, which is basically like a kill switch. So you disable that particular user until he resets all the passwords and then work on it. And again, you don't have to manually reset the password. LastPass takes that up as well, right? So as in management, I get oversight. I get oversight into the multi-factor authentication as well. But I want to talk about multi-factor authentication. Now, this is really interesting because, as I mentioned, it's not just the push notification that's going to come up. It's not just the push, I see what is happening. It gets a little different out here. So when a user tries to log in to a website, in this case, he's trying to log into a single sign-on website. What you'll notice here is on the right-hand side, it's the end user's mobile device. So this is where I said it gets interesting because here, the push notification does not give you a one-time push or approve. It actually gives you contextual information. It gives you information like as to which machine the user is from. Like in this case, it's a Windows Chrome. It gives you information of which IP address the user is coming from, the actual location of it, and the physical location of that particular call that's being made. And you'll notice the contextual bit includes the IP password, IP alert. Now this guy, he's using the same machine, so that's why it's not highlighted. However, the IP address is currently highlighted. The reason why the IP address is highlighted is because it's from a new IP. And that's where it gives a yellow notification. But just in the case of this guy logging from a machine which is not tied to his general machine and then comes from a different IP address, that's when LastPass will automatically block it, send an alert to the administrator saying that someone's trying to log in. This is the user who's trying to log in. A push notification was sent to the user, and it also sends an alert to the user itself. So once it's blocked, the IT administrator can unblock it, or he can set up a condition saying that if it's not, unblock it after 3 minutes or stuff like that. So you have multiple policies that you can define. And it's not just the two-factor, it's the multi-factor out here. So once the user, okay, I'm the right guy, I'm the right machine, just that I'm logging in from a different, logging in from home, so IP address changes daily. So when I approve it, that's where I have the third factor, which is either a face ID, a retina scan, a fingerprint, or we're also looking at an audio notification and then approved process. So this is where the third level of control comes in. So what we basically saw was things that can improve. So first thing, well, you have the option of storing anything and everything in a very safe and secure manner. So which means you will not be able to, be susceptible to certain breaches. And since LastPass works on the browser, you can be rest assured about phishing websites. LastPass will not work on a phishing website. Second thing, you have an option to easily share credentials. You can control as an administrator that you should be able to share what kind of controls as an administrator, as an option to read only, or as an option to hide the password. And third thing is we'll also be, as an IT administrator, we also covered how you can actually see what's happening. Well, one of the key points, shadowing your end users and enforcing certain policies, be it they're within the organization, be it they're outside the organization, you will still be able to control that. And the third one, the fourth one is your multi-factor authentication, which covers both the hidden factor, like your device ID, IP address, and the human factors, like your face ID and others. So you have complete control and authorization without extra hassle. So that's LastPass for you. LastPass has multiple components. It has the enterprise with password management single sign-on, or you want the MFA alone, we have the MFA, and the identity, which includes all-in-one under solution, right? So that pretty much sums up the key points and the factors of what a good password hygiene should be. So I'll open up the floor for any questions.
So thank you, Ranjeet. We got to understand a lot about how to protect our password and how can we leverage the vault. It is not just about the storage of passwords that you're talking about, but you're also talking about access control to those passwords, or if there's a suspicious activity that happens, then how can we involve the second or the third factor, which is there, which is a fantastic offering. So to continue with this, right, what we have at Foetron is the way to experience this product is to really use it. So there's a 14-day enterprise trial that is available for all the members who are part of this session and who are associated with Foetron. Our team can get you started with this particular trial usage and make you experience this product in your environment. Also, we have a free cloud optimization report for Azure and Office 365 or M365, which is what it is called now, is available to you. So now, continuing this further, right? And we want to ask Ranjeet. So Ranjeet, how difficult is it to get started with this particular product, right? So for example, say I'm an organization and I have this challenge and I want to leverage this product. So where are the points that I should get started with? Should I work with my management team to get you started on this? Or should I work with the IT or managerial staff to get started on this?
That's a good point, Sani. Where I would recommend is starting yourself. I understand getting the management and the IT team to buy in, but you would never know how good a solution is unless until you have your buy-in. You need to use, you need to eat your cake before you start promoting it elsewhere. So LastPass, as an option, what we do have is, apart from the enterprise basis, you just start from adding yourself as a user. Start using LastPass, because what LastPass basically will do, it will replace your Chrome Password Manager. Just work on it for 3 days and you'll notice LastPass saving all your usernames and passwords onto the vault, and then giving you alerts. And also, what you have here are additional components that can make it beneficial for you within your organization. For example, what you can basically have is the dark web monitoring. And that's something that we showed earlier, where you can populate all your email addresses, and it happens again, not from our cloud, because we still follow zero knowledge model. It runs directly from your machine. So it alerts you, and once you have it, and trust me, you'd be surprised to know that at least a few of your users would already be using LastPass in your organization, because LastPass is one of those tools that we provide free of cost for end users. So they can take up a free trial, and it's easier from an administrator perspective, because you as an administrator will be able to gather more information. Once you have it, we kind of go on a gradual increase. Have it for your team first, move to the next scale of pushing to the management, because this is one of those tools. Once you start using it, it's impossible for you to go back to using your usernames and password, because technically you will forget all usernames and password, and LastPass does everything that you need on a day in, day out basis.
Right. So Ranjit, you spoke about two particular things here, right? And for the benefit of some members who are from the business background, I want you to explain what is dark web. You continued to repeat this thing multiple times. So if you can just quickly elaborate on what this dark web is and why people should be very aware, should be aware of this particular thing.
Definitely. So, so let's put it this way, right? If you were to take internet as an iceberg, you know how an iceberg has only 10% of it outside the water and the rest 90% under the water, which you're not able to see, and that's how the Titanic went under the ocean as well. But here, that's exactly what internet is. What we surf on a day in, day out basis is only 10% of the whole internet. The rest 90% is where you have everything that you need, like people, how they, like any stolen goods, you find any breach sites. To give you an example, our Aadhaar card has actually been hacked and is available on the dark web for about $18 per person that you can still buy even today. And it's not like you can use your Google or your Firefox and just access the dark web. It has its own browser. It has its way of getting in. They don't have a URL. It's quite complicated, but that's like a forum where people can do any illegal activity without being tracked or caught. Now, if I have something hacked within my environment, the first place that I will promote it, because when I'm hacking into any environment, the first thing that I want to do is make money off it. So how will I make money off it? Is by selling something, and I can't sell it on the internet because they can easily track me and put me in prison for the rest of my life. But if I want to do it in a very safe and secure manner, I would push it on dark web. Now that is a big industry in itself, and that's where you'll notice, you'll see these news articles which says, this bank was usually hacked, and like I said, Aadhaar. Our Aadhaar cards, the entire biometric, even from our eye retina to our fingerprint, everything was hacked, and it's still available in the dark web for people to buy off the shelf. Now, that's where LastPass actually has a program that runs off your machine to check every username that you've got within your account. So if you have a username, you can actually check it yourself. There is this website called Enzoic, or there's also another website called Have I Been Pwned, PWNED, where you can enter your username and it will actually check the dark web to see if you've been hacked or if your password and a username is available. Now, those are certain paid websites. Now, LastPass, as a part of the security measure, actually gives it as a component. So if you have any usernames that have been compromised, LastPass will alert you. And you also, like I said, you have an option to auto reset the password. So you don't have to manually change the password itself.
Right. So Ranjit, in a way, what you're talking about is social engineering as well. So if I want to simplify it, and if you correct me, if my understanding is right, say I am an employee of an organization. I have my personal accounts, which is Twitter, Facebook, and social media accounts, and LinkedIn and professional network as LinkedIn as a professional network. And then I have my Office 365 account or a SAP account that I have. So generally what happens is my passwords for my personal accounts are similar to my passwords for my corporate accounts which are there, because this is the only way I can remember multiple passwords that I use. So I generally keep passwords same across the corporate and personal account. So what you're saying is that if my personal account gets hacked or my password is leaked, so people can social engineer and can even get access to my corporate accounts as well, and that can put my company at risk also. Is that what you are trying to elaborate here?
That's exactly it, right? So, like you said, what if I am using the same password? And let me give an example. LinkedIn, before it got hacked in 2019, most of the employees actually use the same password that they use on your Office 365 on the LinkedIn username and password. So there, right, some of them actually have the habit of not using your Gmail. You would use your company email ID. So for a hacker, it's easier. He gets to see the company email and the company password. One quick use case I would talk about is Sony, where the employee of Sony actually used the same username and password that he uses on his Office 365 on a third-party third-party website, where the third-party website was hacked, and these guys were able to use the same username and password within the organization. That was the first component. Now, when I enter my username and password, technically, as far as the machine is concerned, you enter the right username, right password, so I'm letting you. That's where you need the added security of multi-factor authentication. If I had multi-factor authentication, I would have known, okay, this guy was a push, I got a push notification from this particular machine. And that's where the LastPass's MFA comes in, because if someone logs in from, let's say, California with my username and password, my tool will alert me saying that, you know what, you have a push notification from California on a different IP address and a different machine. So it'll automatically block me, and it'll tell the administrator that someone's trying to access, because that's a security risk that an administrator cannot take at a time like this. Right? And over and above that, what it also does is ensures that you have a very secure way of doing it. Because going back to the same case study that I was talking about, every employee, everyone shares a password. And unfortunately, right now, a place where most of them share passwords are on Google Drive. I have like a updated drive, or sometimes you would also use your Excel cloud save option where you save all your usernames and password. But how secure is it, right? If someone were to get access to it, it's pretty much, they can also use it. That's where LastPass has a different option, where when I share it through LastPass, it ensures that only you and I have access. And even when I'm sharing it to you, I can control the type of access. If I want you to read, edit, or just use the password but not see the password.
Right. So Ranjeet, so what I read a lot recently as well, and what I'm reading is that just getting a PIN on your phone as a two-factor is not one of the safest ways, right? But generally we rely on two-factor, saying that I have my username, password, I have my mobile number configured there, and I'll get a PIN to enter, and then I'm safe. But there are a lot of articles there which says that it is not the safest method. Even the people who have developed this mechanism are saying that this is not the safest mechanism. So what is your take on that?
That's definitely right, because if you look at it, a push notification can be from anywhere. Let me give you an example, right? Let's say every organization right now has users tied to the domain ID. The idea behind that is that you can log in from any machine. If you're within your network, you don't have to carry a laptop to your office room, or you don't have to carry a laptop to one location to the other location. Like, for example, let me take LogMeIn, for example. I am using my username and password out here. If I were to go to my office in Mumbai and I have a workstation out there and I want to quickly log in, the advantage of cloud is that I can log in from that machine out there as well. Which means when I log in, I get a push notification. Now, sometimes these push notifications are pretty simple. It doesn't give you the information that you need. It just gives you a basic push, like as you rightly mentioned, either you get a push notification saying that someone's trying to log in, here's the OTP, you want to approve, or you can use the OTP. And sometimes when you log in from these new machines, these push notifications happen in the background itself. You don't notice it, but you suddenly get a push notification. So, and you have this thing called as muscle memory. You kind of get used to it. You approve. So that's where you need the tool to analyze and let you know if this is wrong or this is new stuff. Like, for example, if the user's getting login from a different machine, that's where there are these hidden components, as well as the factors that you have to look at are the visual notifications. The hidden components are like your IP address, because that's a bigger factor. I want to know if it's the same machine. Second thing is the hardware signature. Are you coming from the same machine or a new machine? Or are you like the MAC address? I'm not trying to get technical, but there are certain signatures that are unique for certain habit, and the tool should alert you so that even if you have the muscle memory of auto approving, it will deny access. So there is this hidden component which alerts the user and the administrator of certain misconstruction of access into your environment. That's where MFA. Or that's where people have moved from two-factor authentication to multi-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication was good, but it has very limited feature. A multi-factor authentication is where you use your this thing. And the other issue with the two-factor authentication, if people are still using it, as you notice, you don't even have to have your machine unlocked. Some two-factor authentication has that option of long press and auto approve, right? So if my machine is unlocked and someone comes in and they do the long press, it still works. It doesn't define that I'm the one giving access. It can be my kid or my wife or my mom who just walks by, she just approves it and she goes on. Right? She doesn't know she got a push notification. She just saw there's a message, she long pressed it, accidentally she would have approved. But sometimes it can also be a problem, right? So that's where the multi-factor looks at who you are. That's where we look at the biometrics into it. We want to categorize you are the right person authorized to log in and not anyone and everyone.
Right. And it becomes all the more important when we're working in this environment which has COVID, right? A lot of people are working from home. So, and what you're saying literally is that no matter how much we try, right, as individuals to protect something for a password, do we keep it tough in a different password? The hackers are much, much smarter than us. They can beat us easily because our core work is to do something more. I can be from a finance department, HR department, sales or marketing department. I am focused on my work, wherein there are hackers focused on accessing and getting my passwords and enter into my company. Is that what you're not saying literally?
Exactly. Things, every time we take two steps, they are at least five steps ahead of us, trying to find out every possible way to break it. So, like I said, there is never a solution which is completely foolproof. There are ways on which hackers can do anything. Like one of the things, like as you mentioned, is social engineering. There are ways you could. There are these, hackathons or hack conferences that actually happen. You can learn more about it, and trust me, there are so many things that we've barely scratched the surface. One of those components is basically called a social phishing. It's called phishing, which is basically what you do is you call someone and act like that particular person. It's easy nowadays. I can easily spoof your phone number and say, you know what, I'm the IT guy. I'm calling you. We remember we used to get these calls earlier where someone would pick up and say, you know, I'm the bank manager from this particular person from this particular bank. This thing has been hacked. But people are getting more ingenious nowadays. All they're doing is they can spoof your number, and that was one of the biggest things is you call your parents and you say, you know what, can you give me the ATM PIN number? And you see a valid number, which is your son's number. And that's where most of these are. Even if you look at banks nowadays, they're going with two-factor authentication. When you try to log into a bank, you'll instantly notice that it sends a push notification to your number. So it's easier to know that someone tried to log in. So those are some of the things. There are ways that people have actually moved from what they were before, where it was just hacking was a very simple thing, but it's now become a very sophisticated way of approaching. And you need to have the tools that are in place to actually ensure that kind of controls. You need to have not only the tools that ensures from an end user perspective, but also ensures that as an IT administrator who's working for multiple offices right now, right? That's the work from home with everyone working in different remote locations. I need to ensure that your machine that you're using nowadays, I can't control what you're doing because you're in your home network. I can't set up a individual firewall for each and every user within the home network. But I need to be able to ensure that whatever you do is not affecting everyone within the organization. Because the simplest or the easiest thing, if you remember a couple of years ago, was the crypto locker ransomware attack, where one machine gets infected, the whole network was messed up. Right. So how do I ensure all of these components are managed even for users who bring their own device or work from a remote location? That's the bigger picture.
Right. Ranjit, I can connect to what you're saying, right? Because I keep on reading this article where thousands of crores have been lost, not in the world, but in India only, where there has been an internet banking fraud or an ATM fraud. I have heard from my colleagues as well that their ATM card got reused, someone used it and money was taken out of their ATM. And such things are there. And banks are also running so much, bigger a campaign that you should not share your pins with anyone, even your known ones or family members. You should keep your cards safe. So all these things are happening around us day in, day out. So what is that advice that you have for people out there in the working in the organization? What is that one thing that they should be very, very careful about and should get immediately started with that?
So yeah, one recommendation that I would always push for, I know I'm sounding like a broken record, is everyone knows it. Right now, the biggest norm is to move for a passphrase rather than a password. Move for a passphrase. Make it bigger. Now, even your banks recommend you to go for a passphrase. Earlier, if you remember, your banks would have limited the password length to about only 18 characters, which means they made it easier for you. But now they've actually made it to 64 characters, which means you can actually have a sentence. And it's easier for someone to remember a sentence, and it's harder for someone to break the sentence. So let me give an example. Instead of going too technical, let me give an example of how a hack actually happens, right? So let's say I want to hack into your password. Most of these stuff, even let's say a bank has been compromised. A bank, like you said, certain passwords from a particular bank might be compromised and it's available for someone. Banks do not store your password in a plain text. They actually store it in a hashed value. Now, the hash that we saw earlier, they basically have a junk hash. So every person who's hacking has something called as a rainbow database. Rainbow database actually has, okay, if this is the hash chunk, this could be the password, or a combination of these words could be the password. So if let's say hash hyphen whatever the password is, I could say, okay, ABC is the password. Now, for this to work, I need to have a lesser number of characters. Now, if I say if my password is 1234, my hashed value would be only about 8 characters long. And it's easier for me because a machine can run that algorithm multiple times. But when I say my password is 45 characters, if I say my name is Ranjit, that's my password. If I say 45 characters, the hashed value will be at least 128 or 256-bit characters. That will be quite a long. And for a supercomputer to process that particular password would at least take about 2 to 3 years. Now, if I increase it, it increases exponentially. If I make it like a 64-bit password, it would take a supercomputer almost about 3,000 years to break it with the same hashing. So the longer, the better. So always go for a longer password. Gone are those days where you need to have uppercase and lowercase. Uppercase and lowercase does help, but the rainbow database that I'm talking about is always updating. So if you're using password as $PA $W0RD, it is not as secure as what we thought earlier. It is same as password itself. Now, if I say password is the best option, that is more safer than the word password itself in different characters. So go for a longer password is one thing. Second thing that I would always recommend, if you get any notification, if you get a push notification, deny first, and then you try to check it again. So unless and until you're on the machine, sometimes you'll get a push notification without you knowing it because there might be an internet lag or anything. Deny that particular notification because that's a very bad thing. And the third thing, use a password manager by default. Be it if you're not even in an enterprise, right? I'm not saying LastPass. There are multiple password managers that are there in the market, and LastPass is one of those which we give free of cost for customers. These things do need. I mean, even if it's not for your work related, look at it from a personal perspective. As a personal user, I'm logging to LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, multiple social media websites, multiple banking accounts. I might also have mutual fund accounts. So even on a personal level, we log into so many different applications, and we are creatures of habit. We repeat the passwords. We know we are not supposed to do that. We repeat the passwords. We know we need to have different passwords. We cannot do that. We know we need to have complicated passwords. We cannot do that because it's hard for us to remember. That's where a tool like this would make more sense. And the third and important thing, this is something that I was actually talking to my parents the other day, was if anyone gets any notification saying that, you know what, this thing is hacked, and now it's easier to actually send it like a phishing website. One of those things is look for the website where it is actually coming from, because the look and the feel can be the same, but the URL is not the same. And the worst thing that you can do is click on a link that is sent through a text message, because on your phone, you don't have that flexibility, because especially if you're using an Apple or even most of the Android devices, they don't have the whole URL. They just have the name of the website. So if it's facebook.com, they just put it as Facebook. They capture it from something called as meta URL. So it doesn't have www.facebook.com. I could put it as Ranjeet Mani, and I can just add the meta URL as Facebook. And on your phone, it'll show facebook.com. But and it's easier to trick a computer to think it's something. So that's where you need to always never click on a link on your mobile device. That's like the worst thing that you have to do. Nor do you give out any information on a link, because it's easier. I understand someone send you a text message saying that, you know what, you need to update your password out here. It's easier to just click and update it, but it's best to go for the website, check on the website, and then go back into the portal and see if there's something wrong. Never click on a link that comes in. Ensure you have a password manager. And the third thing is to always keep a track of how you use something like, as I mentioned, a password manager to ensure that you have the dark web monitoring. At least if you're not monitoring the dark web through a password manager, just at least put your usernames that you use on a regular basis on, like I said, Have I Been Pawned, which is one of those free solutions. You can run up to 10 usernames, and you'll be surprised to know that there are some of your passwords that are available without you even knowing that it's been compromised.
Ranjit, what you're saying and what you've shared is very practical, right? Every day in, day out, we get a lot of phishing and spam emails. We get a lot of SMSs which says that you can change your password, reset your password, and a lot of stuff is happening, right? And we don't know when we'll fall prey to all these things. So thank you for sharing such valuable insights. I'm sure that will be beneficial to customers and us as individuals as well in all forms. And we appreciate your time in sharing this insights.
Definitely. Happy to help as well. We're at the top of the hour.
Yeah, I think this is where it ends from our side. Ranjeet, any final thoughts that you have?
I think pretty much sorted. Thanks a lot for the time. Thanks for the quite interactive session as well, Sani. It was quite nice talking to you, and hopefully the team on the call was able to learn something from this. Thanks for the
Sure.
time. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Ranjeet. And this brings us to the end of this particular session, Corridors of Technology. We'll come back to you again with a new product which can help you to build security, productivity, and scale in your organization. We thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone.